In just a moment, you'll have the pleasure of hearing from this session speaker, Keeffe. Now, she's got a couple of books in the store, so if this session stimulates your interest and you'd like to know more about her important work, please find that work in the store. This morning, you've probably read her background, so you've got a sense of the spirit that you'll find in front of you. You should know that her exploration, her work of how science and non-duality can coexist in balance is the foundation for the rest of what you'll be hearing over the next couple of days. So without any further delay, join me in welcoming Keeffe.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Prior to non-duality, this title seems to be a little bit controversial because I've received a few emails since I started using this phrase, a few emails about there's nothing prior. How can you make a concept of what is prior? So let's see. Let's investigate it a little bit and see what happens. The subject of perception that results in you calling yourself an individual, a personal I, all about me, my story, my drama. It kicks in every morning because when you're in deep sleep the night before, there ain't nobody there. Mind is in abeyance, it's on holidays, there's nothing happening, there's no knowing if you exist or not, and somehow you're perfectly fine with it. You wake up in the morning. For many people, there is a glimpse at that moment. There's a space between the first thought being owned and the body awakening. If there is that space, if you have that space of like just lying there and nothing happening at all, let that space expand. Before the personal I rises up, something happens in the perceiving machine that we call mind and brain, the relationship between the two. That perceiving machine, what it does is it sets up a filter on pure perception. So a filter kicks in which allows one to see in terms of subject, object. A split comes, separation is valid. Separation is full blast. The moment that subject-object filter of perception clouds and influences what you think you're seeing. So in the moment that you wake up, there may or may not be a glimpse, but have a look and see if it's noticed. Actually, it's a feeling, it's emotional, it's my to-do list. It's a bad feeling of guilt, of shame. I run some loop first thing in the morning. What is it? Find out what it is that turns on your moving. What turns on the All About Me story? We imagine that the I is there, that the I wakes up in the morning and then my day starts. It's not so. The way this subject-object lens of perception kicks in, the objects appear first. The perception that you're running sees the objects first. Because the objects are there, if separation has not been transcended, then the subject will come up to support the relationship between subject and object. The objects, not you, are perceived first. And because of the outside world being perceived, there is a localization from that perception, and with ownership there is me, my world and what I have to do, and there's me and the curtains, and me and my partner. Okay so far? All right. So the labeling of other creates me as perceiver. It's not me as perceiver looking at the other. So if you want to transcend the idea of separation through dissolving the personal I, if you want to do it through this lens, if you want to explore if this methodology makes sense to you, then it would be a good idea to see how the labeling mechanism is creating an objectified world. That is what initiates the arising of the subjective I. No personal I without objectified external world. If it's not objectified, the personal I will not exist. It just cannot arise. So as soon as the I is in place, the personal I is in place, the I appears, and the I appears again later, and the I appears later, but because consciousness, the creative mechanism that reflects itself, that gives rise to all of this, what it does is it joins the dots. I, and I, and I, and I, and it thinks that the I is a continuous thing. It's not a continuous thing at all. Flashes on and off, a gazillion times during the day. The most potent thing that makes the I feel alive is desire. So as soon as the objective world is seen, and the I, the subject, comes up, watch the next thing that happens. I want a coffee, I want to have sex with my partner, I want to let out the dog, whatever it is. There's going to be something that is I want. And something can make it, this I, uncomfortable, diseased feeling of separation already. Let's make it better, let's make it better. The subject-object perspective is in place. So what the subject-object will do, will it make you think that something outside of me can make this better? Because if you've got subject-object in place, how can you see that, whoa, actually this sense of separation is what's making me feel that something outside there will make me feel better? It's not. It's because the objectified world, your options are outside because you see subject-object, the separation is in place. So something outside of me will make me feel better. We've got a potent desire, and bingo, the I is now full-blown, full-blown. The greatest fuel for the personal I is desire. The greatest fuel. Me, myself, I. What you really want is to be desireless. When you go after something, when there's a desire for something, and the object of the desire is received, have you ever noticed that it's only good for a while? And then as time goes on, it's like, you know, that wasn't all it was cracked up to be, or actually, I didn't like that so much, or I thought this would be better. And I want something bigger and better, actually. It's like, let's go on and on and on. And this is the game. This is the game of consciousness, trying to recycle itself, absorbed in itself, recreating a personal I again and again and again. Because as long as you haven't seen through the desire mechanism, you won't see through the very thing that is fueling the personal I more than anything else. The feeling when a desire is satisfied, that feeling of satisfaction is actually the absence of desire. That's all it is the absence of desire. All right. This is what an awful lot of people get caught on the spiritual path. For some reason, unity, intimacy, seems to be the antidote for this feeling of separation. But it's a clever twist in the tail by consciousness, because it's actually the flip side of the same coin. It doesn't transcend separation. It doesn't do anything at all to drop this discomfort, this gnawing sense that there's something not okay, whole or complete, when that separate I feeling is running. The unity intimacy mind imagines, oh yeah, if I had something, or if I could just rest in whatever, a relationship, in that connection with God, whether it, whatever that divine is, rest within, commune with myself. That oneness, this is hailed as being something important. If you're viewing from the subject-object perspective, all it can do is offer contrast for what you have. All it can do. So if unity consciousness is actually perceived to just be another step on the way, and it too can be transcended, that it too is just another phase, another state, another experience. Okay, if it's seen on a trajectory to someplace, now we've got some movement, now we've got some evolution. But usually, desire is what sees the unit, is what is motivating the idea that community, connection, merging with God actually can offer you something. It can't. It can't unless the filter of subject-object is dissolved in some way. So consciousness makes sure, it builds in its own community, continuity. It makes sure that it's going to continue always, because it's a self-perpetuating mechanism. And in this self-perpetuating mechanism, it's totally absorbed with itself. If it wasn't absorbed with itself, the very first person that saw that they weren't a person, once separation was ever transcended, the very first realization that ever happened would have been the last. Because once the bubble would have burst within consciousness, why would it continue? There's no reason at all it would have continued. But it continues because it has a maintenance, a self-maintenance, self-perpetuating mechanism built in. So unity, intimacy, what happens to pull it back? The self-absorption of consciousness kicks in. And what's really going on here is that I will feel better if I'm connected with God. My life will be better if there is that inner connection with who I really am. So the personal I is in there already. Let's make it better for me by taking something from that and heading back and improving my life. Where is it going? In a big, lovely loop. 2 rainbows. That will make it better, and actually it'll make it better for myself. So what's happening here is that when unity and intimacy, that frequency, that state is touched, if the personal I is coming along on the ride, you will notice it, because the experience of unity consciousness, of community, that sensation will be experienced as something delicious personally. You will love it. When you love the experience of unity and connectedness, well, you're going to head right back, because the contrast is going to come soon, because all we're doing is approaching unity consciousness from the flip side of separation, an antidote. Because contrast is beautiful. This is the world of duality. Contrast totally works. Totally works. I'm going to show you exactly 1 minute. It's 60 seconds of video. There was looking around for what would explain how we get caught in this. And there was a video that probably, I'd hazard a guess, most of us have seen more than any other video. 60 seconds. Watch it from the point of view of consciousness perpetuating itself by grasping and attaching to the idea of intimacy, of unity. Grasping that in order to make it better for the personal I. Just watch.
Every single person in power today is working from the wrong big picture, but we have the right one. So the question is, how can we share it? How can we make it beautiful so everybody realizes not only what it is, but that they're part of it and they love it?
We're all in this together, and there's not much time. I feel that in my bones.
I am here to tell people that by using this picture, by understanding how we fit into it, we are discovering the bond that links all human beings and that could make it possible to solve global problems.
I find a lot of conferences and workshops I go to, there's a sense of space between me and the presenters or the people that are attending, but here there's an intimacy, and we're all kind of swimming in the same space of creativity and inquiry, and it's beautiful.
There's a lot of people looking for connection instead of looking for separation.
So if you view this from your personal subjective, it's really attractive. This conference looks really attractive. But if you actually see what the hooks are for your personal life to feel better. Does anything change? No, we're moving the furniture around, that's all we're doing. That's all we're doing. Because what's really happening is we're replacing the personal ego with the unity ego. The ego comes with you. Personal I is happy for a while, there's a lovely atmosphere here. Unity consciousness, it's palpable here. The global feeling of this community in 2 completely different sectors. You can breathe it, you can feel it here. It's beautiful, but with what are you meeting it with? So the personal I is happy for a while. Noble values replace personal agendas. So I want to feel better, but I can change the world, because they got it wrong and we know it's better. And because, if we change the whole world, oh my God, everybody can be enlightened or something. So just watch, it's like from my agenda, we replace for a noble one, which is more politically correct. Because then we're all singing off the one hymn sheet, because this is a noble value. Do you see, nothing is happening at all. This is the unity ego talking. This is how the unity ego talks. It talks about noble values and virtues. The subjective perspectives prevail in both sides of the same coin. Because it's, I want something different, and I want to change the world, so because there's something wrong with the world. Is that something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with the world? It's just the personal perspective, it's all about me, and the unity one, it's all about the world. So then there's something wrong with the world, but there's something wrong either way, with both, you see? The understanding gleaned from unity consciousness begins to erode with the return of the dualistic perspective. So if the personal I is in there with the experience, grasping the experience of unity consciousness, that can be lovely. You go home and in a few weeks' time you'll be like, that was lovely. Maybe I'll watch their videos, maybe where's the next one? And off you go. And do you ever wonder why nothing happens and you're on the spiritual path for 30 years? Okay, so there's one little trick here. Consciousness is a cyclical movement. Remember the two rainbows? It's always recycling, reusing itself. History repeats itself. We don't seem to learn a whole lot. Even the evolution that's going on at the moment, it's like there's been phases of evolution like this where there was a leap and a mutation. This has happened before. There's nothing new in any of this. The furniture might look a bit different, but really, it's the same room. Really it is. Because the self-perpetuating, all aspect of consciousness shows us that all that can really happen is that manifestation can look at itself, reflect itself in any way it can. It's still just manifestation because subject-object is in place. And if that dualistic perspective is running all of the time, that's what we're going to have. A continuity of consciousness manifesting every version of the story that it can to keep the I entertained. That's what it does. That's what it's about. That's what it's for. But somehow, there's kind of this resonance of like, there's something more. There's something more. Are you going to find it within consciousness? No, consciousness has to be transcended. That's the whole point. It's about transcendence. It's not about making it better for the personal I. It's a trajectory, not a cycle. So your spiritual evolution, the movement of whatever it is that goes beyond out there, that transcends, it's a trajectory. It's not a cycle. The separate I is dropped, and therefore cannot enjoy pure unity. So it would be all right to be absolutely indifferent to this global unity, that vibe that's here this weekend. Not for the personal I to say, oh, I'm not supposed to be enjoying this. It's not about that at all. It's about having no attachment to it, about being quite indifferent to it and just seeing it as, well, that's another state that's offered. Traditional methods, observe your thoughts. Start pulling back. Step back from the observing capacity. Don't entertain labeling. Detach. You know these. If you've been a spiritual seeker, you know these steps. You've come across them a gazillion times. Let's look at this trajectory though. So let's go from dual to non-dual first. The densest form is when, labeling happens and the world is objectified, and that the perspective itself, that pure perception, what it does, we know, science has told us, it gives form to that which is energy. It gives a very solid form when the perception comes through the lens of me, myself, separate I. When the belief is separate there, physical form has a density and a thickness, and it will tell you it's real. If perception comes from one who has transcended separation, the forms are never real again. So there's a seeing that when it's not real, I can turn on the labeling mechanism and make it real in order for functioning to happen. But the transcendence, what it enables at every level, is what looks like dense and solid physical form becomes less and less so. It's just energy. It's not even seen because the labeling mechanism is what will give it its existence. So I've noticed that scientists are talking about, perception influencing molecules, particles. I'm not a scientist, I don't have the jargon yet, but influences them so that it turns into a wave and it turns into an object. It's like, it has to turn it into an object because the viewer is somebody who's looking for empirical evidence, who's looking for cause and effect, who's locked into the viewpoint the characteristics that come from me, myself, I is real. You see, the viewing point is what is the problem. The viewing point is giving the evidence that is appropriate for what a scientist needs. That makes sense. The perception is the problem. The perceiver is not being examined. And I'd love to meet a scientist who can see this. If there's one here, talk to me later, huh? Okay. On the trajectory, we've got the observer, we're observing our thoughts. Okay, science and non-duality, we're together on this one, that we have the capacity to see our thoughts. Are human beings the only beings that have the capacity to see their thoughts? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Can I prove it? Nope, but I know it. I know it, because, you know, the more you do this work, the more what is physically unseen, those other realms, those other dimensions, they're everywhere. We interchange between dimensions all the time. It's no big deal. It's like, does something need to be in physical form? Do they have to be empirical evidence for something? But once that me, myself, separate I, once that mechanism of objectification, once that starts to break up, the other dimensions are quite open to you. Quite open. And in glimpses of where you saw something, maybe in meditation, maybe in your yoga mat, maybe just driving the car, and it's like, whoa! Something shifted in your perception. You can be sure of it, that what happened was the objectification. The subject-object layer just got swiped out for a little bit. What do people do? How do I make this, how do I give this some kind of credibility so it can be integrated in my life? And it's like, oh, go with it, let it get looser. Let the limits of your mind expand. Moving on from observer. So the I am. This is where there's no direct identification with I am Jack. It's like the Jack character is here. The I am is, Nisargadatta Maharaj wrote a book called I Am That. Later on in his life he said, that title is the worst move I ever made. Because I am that. He objectified God and, you know, identified himself being something. It's like, whoa, just move the furniture around again instead of being I am Nisargadatta, I am that. It's like, okay, we just swap one for the other. We continue labeling. Why? Because language is a product of when this first layer was most active. When subject-object perception was most active, language was born out of this, at least the Latin languages, that's for sure. And so it's me, you. And our language works on this. If there was no word for personal I, it wouldn't be half as solid. But we've no other way to communicate. For a few years, this Jack character has been calling himself the Jack character. It sounds nuts, but actually it created such a loosening when it started. It was like, sure, I'm not here, I'm not this woman at all. Like, she's just like a piece of software or a puppet doing her thing. What I am has no connection to her at all. No connection to her. None. What I am doesn't even see her, isn't even looking at this. What I am knows that this cannot even exist. It only exists within itself. Consciousness is a self-contained mechanism, creating itself, manifesting, reflecting itself back onto itself. That's all it's doing. So the I am state. All right, so then we shift into, you know, it's not I am a woman, I am this. It's like there is this isness going on. So we'll get refined a little bit, and we've got unity, beingness, the natural state. A lot of people have achieved this level in their spiritual search. A lot of them. It's like things are actually okay underneath it. You kind of know underneath it. You know, things are always all right. It's just me and my story and my drama, but underneath there's a knowing that everything's okay. A lot of people get to this, which is just great. But from here, there's a little bit of a price to be paid. What comes up next is existence. This is where at the moment, what it looks like, the science and the non-dual have not yet sat down. What really do you mean by existence? Because in the talk last night, it was like, well, it's taken that existence is real. That was slipped in there. Science says existence is real, that things are automatically assumed to exist. Transcending unity consciousness, existence is what's up. You will hear about the death of the personal I. Okay, there's a death of who you think you are while the body is still alive. All right, more than that, existence itself, is it a myth? Is there actually authenticity to it at all? You'll find it's just an idea. Existence, like all of it, is just an idea. It is another label that we've placed on something to give it a place in the cosmos. When existence is seen to be a myth, pure perception kicks in, labeling stops. And you wonder, well, how do you work in the world? Traditionally, those who transcended and went way, way beyond where this trajectory can point to were taken out from the world. And the collective supported them. In ashrams, they were supported every which way, not allowed to touch money, kept away from sex, from family life, everything. Their life was in service to the community. That's the life of the guru. But what happens is, of course, the labeling can stop. Piece of cake. Of course you don't have to make decisions, you don't have to engage and watch the world and stay in there at that level, managing things. But now, in this shift that's in the evolution that's going on right now, the speed at which it's happening, we've got to live in the world. You still have a mortgage to pay. Nothing changes. Your life stays the same. You still have to, get up in the morning and do your own thing and answer your emails, and that's how it goes. So, what happens here, what's a useful way to look at it, is there's a break between the thinking mind and the working mind. The working mind is the thing that kicks on to enable you to do something. So labeling happens not because something is actually valid and its existence is assumed. Labeling happens in order to enable the smooth functioning of the physical form. The thinking mind is transcended because the thinking mind is all about me and my story. That's what's going on there. So that's why we talk about thoughts. Thoughts aren't the problem. Believing them is the problem. Yeah. So the thinking mind recedes, disappears totally for some, but the volume gets drastically turned down because there's no interest. Because the thinking mind is to enable the personal I to get strong, to make it all about me. And once it's seen to be not true, there's nothing there, there's nothing there. It's just an idea. So then why keep thinking about it? So pure perception is the unfiltered viewing point, and it would be very interesting to look at particles using pure perception only. Would there be a huge shift into a wave? I doubt it very much. Next layer, transcendence of conceptual thought. So this is where we get a bit dysfunctional because we don't have language for this. What gets seen and what seems to be rare is the mechanism that creates concepts. This is prior to existence. This is kind of way out there. So this is beyond time. Time collapses, space collapses. So out, prior. The conceptual thought itself gets transcended. What happens is that the mechanism that creates concepts shows itself. The arising of the initial concept shows itself. From there, if there's anything that non-duality can offer to science in terms of moving this, don't even know what it is yet, don't even know what to call it, if it's a movement, this coming together, if it's about something, the tools of analysis of what we really are have to come from consciousness. They have to come from consciousness. How could they purely come from a dualistic, empirical evidence? It's like we'd stop at existence. But if you've been doing some spiritual work, you've had gaps, if not complete, abidance in what's beyond existence. I know there's a lot of people here who haven't touched this for several years, haven't got near any idea of a personal life for several years. So I'm speaking to the converted there, surely among some forms that are still here without any sense of the personal unity, without any investment in the physical world. What would be the tools of analysis that would come from pure consciousness itself? What toolkit would we use if we're not looking for empirical evidence, if we're not abiding by the laws of cause and effect? What tools would we use? That's our job, the non-dual side. Prior to that. Because duality, you can see, is at the lower end of this arrow, and after it, We hit non-dual along the way, because, around unity being this the natural state, we've got non-dual. It's like there is no separation. Non-duality has been hit. Okay, drop non-duality because it's still a concept. It is still a way of seeing. Perception is still running. It's not pure enough yet because it's seeing things in a non-dual way. Pure perception itself does not see anything. Seeing happens itself. Pure perception is really the verb perceiving. There's no one perceiving anything. That triad has fallen apart. There's just perceiving. And prior to all of that, well, we use the word truth, don't we? We use the word truth, but prior to the concept of truth. You see, we're stuck again because I've got to call it. What do I call it? But I have to stick truth somewhere, but it's the minor, it's in the parentheses. Because prior, all I can do is say, hey, there's an arrow, go there. What can go there? You see, what can go there? Now we're looking at particles again. What can go there? What you are is there, but there's no there, there's no place, there's no time, nothing that you can make a concept about exists. Because existence itself is way too primitive. What do we do with this? Finally, nothing can be personally gained from realizing truth, yet phenomenally, it makes the world of a difference. Ironically, the consequences of seeing the truth has more impact than anything that can be done from the point of view of holding a lens of separation. However noble you think, there will be an agenda because consciousness has a survival mechanism built into itself. And no matter how good or how much change it's bringing in the world, it's not making a button of a difference unless the outside of all of it, energy, some way has a resonance here in a physical form. There is no agenda. There is no contamination with it in any shape or form. There can't be. Because the outside of all of it, well, the physical form continues, but it makes the world of a difference. As a consequence, not as a motivation. Anyway, make what you like of that.